Hi, everybody. I am Dr. Marianne Pinkston, and this is The Better Life with Dr. Pinkston. And today I am bringing a very unique and wonderful guest. She is in Ireland at the moment. She is back and forth between the States and Ireland. She is a musician and a singer and has a wide array of genre that she sings with. But again, I'll let her kind of tell her story and all the things that she does, and you will recognize her. Her name is Nella. And again, from Ireland. Nella, welcome in. I want to tell everybody that we're going to talk a little bit about ADHD, not just the music, take a little bit of a different direction. But I, first of all, would love for you to introduce yourself and tell your story and how you arrived where you are. I'm so happy to have you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's lovely to be here. Thank you. Where do I start? So do you mean my ADHD story or my my whole life story?
Bring it all home. People are going to wonder about you. You've got a great story.
Okay, so my name is Nella, like you said. So I'm a singer, songwriter, composer, and then I'm also an ADHD executive coach and neurodiversity consultant. Totally unplanned. That was never part of my life plan. So I have been doing music all my life, had a few number ones, got an amazing opportunity to sing in World of Warcraft video game. And I live between Ireland and Los Angeles, like you said. I work with a lot of Emmy and Grammy winning composers in Los Angeles. So music has always been sort of my main thing. Never thought I would do anything else until a family member got diagnosed with ADHD about, I keep saying, a certain amount of years, and then the years go by and I keep forgetting to add the years, So I think it was about, maybe 9 years ago. Basically I didn't think they had ADHD until I looked it up and I said, oh my God, this is me. This is other people in my family. And then I got a diagnosis. And honestly, it just made so much sense. And so I then was advised by the psychiatrist who had diagnosed me that one of the treatment options was getting an ADHD coach. I'd never heard of that. I got an ADHD coach and it changed my life in a very short amount of time. So then I sort of had this overwhelming sense of I can't gatekeep this information. This has changed my life so dramatically. I wonder where she trained. So I, asked her and I saw where she trained at ADCA in New York, did that training, a very intense training for a year. And now I've been kind of mixing my two businesses. It's weird calling the music industry a business, but hey, it is the music business, as my mother keeps reminding me. I never called myself a businesswoman. And my mom always said, you are a businesswoman. Now I'm giving my mom business advice from my other business. Anyway, so that's how But actually, you're a businesswoman. So anyway, so I coach, people like myself who are business owners, some other creative professionals, other musicians, composers, some psychiatrists, some doctors, I work with multinational companies, doing consultancy, training teams on how to understand neurodiversity and ADHD and autism and how to leverage it rather than actually just see it as needing accommodations or, needing to give. It's very misunderstood. So, so I work one-to-one with people and then I work with some companies as well. And then I tour in China with my music a lot. I spend half my time in Los Angeles, as I said, and I release music. And so there's two mad worlds happening at the same time. And I have a daughter who's in university thriving now, which is great. So that's a synopsis.
That is sometimes how the story happens, though. We pick something in life where we focus and our passion and our interests are, and then something happens in life, right? And it takes the rug right out from under you. And so you start to change directions and develop. And it's beautiful in a way because then that allows you to reach out and help others, which is definitely, kind of what's happened to me in integrative medicine and to you with this. So, highlighting that, I think that there is, something you said resonates with me and probably with the audience too, is that not many people really understand it and begin to read something, recognize something in themselves. We all have to go to the internet now and kind of diagnose ourselves, which I hate for people. But, what were the things that you read that stood out to you the most about, and how would somebody get a diagnosis, an appropriate diagnosis of ADHD?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much you could say on both of those questions. So I suppose the first one, what did I read? I don't really remember. What I do remember was that what I read was not what I thought ADHD was. Right. That's probably the best way to explain it. So I had thought that, like my dad was a senior social worker in Ireland here. He dealt with child protection and etc. So he had always talked about ADHD in the house, but he was working with kids that were coming from troubled backgrounds, that had disadvantaged backgrounds. So ADHD was spoke about a little bit in our house because my brother was always suspected of having it. Hey ho, he does. But anyway, but yeah. So it sort of, I had the idea that ADHD was little boys bouncing off the walls, bold kids. Adults didn't have it. Low intelligence was another misconception that I had. Nobody had told me that. I just had thought that. I didn't understand what it was. And when I read what it was, and I started doing some hyper-focused deep research, as us ADHDers do when we're interested in something, I realized, oh my God, this is absolutely explaining so much of my life story, and it's explaining the reasons for a lot of my successes also, not just bad things, because what I've learned over the years, and it's been proven to me over and over and over with every client I've worked with, is it is just it's not a bad brain. It's a different brain with different good and bad. But when we don't have the manual to be able to be in the driver's seat of understanding how to use our brain, how are you supposed to know how to operate life in the way that your brain was created? So
absolutely.
So I think it was more that I learned that what my idea of ADHD was absolutely inaccurate, and actually some of the most successful people in the world and highest intelligence in the world, people have ADHD, and that's a lot of the strengths of ADHD are the reasons for their successes and their hyper-focus and resilience. People had always said that to me. How do you keep going? Because I was in the music industry for years earning no money, but still just keep on going because I was getting that dopamine, and I was resilient, I guess. And lucky I had good support around me from my family, but which is important with ADHD because that determines how the symptoms or the bad symptoms, can end up presenting. But anyway, so I'm answering you in 15 different ways in true ADHD style. But yeah, so I think that was one thing that when I read, to answer your question, when I read, what ADHD was, I realized I had totally no idea. And a lot of people think, we go, I understand ADHD. I'm like, well, I bet you don't. I bet you're going to learn a lot, because our manual, even in our training, was like 10,000 pages.
Right. I love how you put that your brain is working differently. And if you don't understand the manual, because in schools and, we have programs for people, but it is, we try to standardize everything, especially here in the States. I don't know what it's like overseas, but we try to just standardize everything, and people's brains do work differently. And so what are the basic characteristics of ADHD and diagnosing somebody? If you see somebody and you're like, you have it, what are those characteristics that people have?
Well, firstly, I'm not a diagnostician, I'm not a psychiatrist, but I can usually, tell one of my people. But yeah, I mean, so I suppose people always ask me that question, but there is, if I was to ask you, and I'm not trying to be sarcastic or smart, but if I was to ask you or ask somebody, what are the symptoms or characteristics of a neurotypical brain? How long would you be answering that question for? It is the exact same ADHD. I could answer that question and start talking now, not stop for a week, and not still, because it's just a different blueprint, different operating system. However, just to kind of name a few things, I suppose, and again, you can't take things, I'm always careful to answer this question, because you can't take things in isolation, because just like a psychiatrist makes any diagnosis, they're working off, the DSM-5 scale. So it's when all of these symptoms are present for a long time, that quantifies a diagnosis. So me just saying a few of them isn't really the full answer, right? But typically, a lot of people with ADHD will have overwhelm a lot. So H in ADHD, a lot of people think that means physically hyperactive, whilst in boys, when they're young, maybe it can be, but it's not that. It's hyperactivity of the brain. So we get lots of thoughts at the exact same time. And then in real time, we have to learn which thought to execute the function of. That's why often we can be, one of the symptoms can be executive dysfunctioning. So that has good and bad. And I'm very much a strengths-focused way of thinking around this, because that is, the actual reality. So there's good and bad with that. Number one, that can be overwhelming when we get lots of ideas at the same time. I always tell the story of going to my piano, sitting down, I hear a song I want to write. I sit down, I start writing a folk song. As soon as I start listening, I hear 15 other, well, not 15, but, about 5 or 6 other songs I'm writing in my head. I start writing all of those, and then I get overwhelmed, shut the piano, and I've written nothing. Now I've learned a different way of going to the piano. When that happens, I record them all separately. Okay, now I've banked a load of songs. I go back and honor the first one, right?
Great.
So that's not a bad thing. It can be bad when you don't understand what's happening. And then you go into overwhelm with everything in your life. You don't have the skills to understand how to utilize your brain and what you actually need.
Correct.
We lead with our emotional mind most of the time. So then we can often get into, trouble with that. So, but also on the positive of that, we're great in a crisis because our brains and great problem solvers, because our brains at all time, in real time, have to problem solve which thought to execute the function of, right?
Yeah.
So if we, 10 thoughts, our brains always have to choose which one we're going to go with. Therefore, we're great in a crisis. We're great problem solvers, So, it's really, So that's some rejection sensitivity can be a big symptom of ADHD. Interrupting people because we're afraid if we don't get it out of our mouth, it feels like there's a motor in the back of our back, kind of that we have to get it out. So often ADHDers will keep interrupting each other, but most people with ADHD don't mind that. People who are neurotypical usually may see that as being rude when actually that's how we function, because we'll just spark off each other. And so a lot of people with ADHD that don't know they have ADHD may say, well, that's normal. It's like, what I've learned was, well, it was normal in my family dynamic because there was a lot of us that were right? Yeah. But to me, that was normal. When people came to the house for dinner, they were like, this is like a TV show. They're like, what's going on? You're rolling it up. You don't think there's anything wrong with it. That's normal to us. So, there's being highly sensitive, like I said, rejection sensitivity so any rejection or perceived rejection that somebody with ADHD that has ORSD, rejection sensitivity dysphoria. So any rejection or perceived rejection that we get feels like a physical pain in the chest. Even if it's not actual rejection, somebody might simply say, oh, you're going to eat another piece of cake. You might hear, I might hear that, whatever your kind of hang up might be or insecurity might be. I might hear that as, oh my God, you're so fat. And, I feel a physical pain in the chest. So then I'll often impulsively, or somebody with ADHD will impulsively give back a very impulsive reaction at the same size hurt that we got. And the other person goes, whoa, why are you overreacting?
Yes.
Now, when you understand that your brain does that, you can kind of filter information through that knowledge and through that kind of
criticism too, right? Criticism. So not just rejection, but criticism sensitivity too. Maybe taking, or is it just the
same thing to me? Right? Yeah, I mean, I think we're talking the same thing. Yeah, I mean, because, and I guess well, I was just about to say, but on the other side of that sensitivity, most of us with ADHD will be very creative, whether that's in idea generation, business ideas, songwriting, for example. So I wouldn't give back that sensitivity if I didn't go into the depths of that deep hurt. How could I actually filter that out into music, into writing, into business ideas, into empathy? We're very empathic. So, there's positives and negatives if you don't know what you're dealing with that. Sorry, what did you say there? Because I went off that and then I forgot what you had just said.
That's perfect. No, what you're describing is perfect. Criticism, just kind of equating criticism, maybe.
You're right. Yeah, so, you're right. Sorry, I think there's a little delay in I'm interviewing.
There's a delay, right? So I apologize for that. But there is, but I love how you're mentioning the positives on these things, because here when we discuss ADHD or ADD with people, we always filter it into a negative sense, like a disease, when really it can be a very positive and fulfilling thing. Again, if you, like you say, understand how to deal with it. So those are great examples. Absolutely.
It's so true. I mean, and that's not me glamorizing it. It's very, very hard to be somebody who experiences ADHD if you don't know and you don't have the skills of understanding what you need. You're, often with clients, when I start working with them, I give them this entire different Maslow's hierarchy of needs for ADHDers. We have a totally different system or set of fundamental needs that have to be understood by yourself, that and most of us don't even understand what our actual needs are, and most of us don't have personal boundaries put in place, et cetera, et cetera. So relationship breakdowns can happen. So it's a wonderful life if you know what you're dealing with, and that's why the coaching changed my life very quickly, because it validated my entire life experience. It gave me all the skills I needed to understand of how to operate, from how my brain, works at an optimum, you know. So
Absolutely.
there's just so much to say, like I said. So anyway, I'm trying to get it all out, but anyway.
It's a lot to cover. It's a huge topic. I mean, there's no way to cover this in a simple podcast, right? But I love how you're describing this. I love how you're putting this together. And so, part of this is, trying to define it for people so that they understand if they've thought they had it, or they feel a family member has it, or, trying to help their children, or, a teacher trying to understand it in their classroom or whatever. Defining it is very difficult. And I think that in the past there have been a lot of people maybe, I don't know if this is correct, but misdiagnosed. So, or lost in diagnosis, never diagnosed, not misdiagnosed, but never caught and never diagnosed. And so we're trying to do that earlier and earlier. And now our numbers of diagnosis has grown significantly. And we're trying to explain that. We're trying to bury that into certain foods that we've eaten and environmental things. But really, this runs in families. Am I correct?
Yes. Yeah, it is genetic. Yeah. I mean, we know that now. And say that again.
Yeah, I do believe that. It seems to be, when I talk with families, it's, the mom, the dad. If they're bringing their child to you, I'm like, well, which one of you identifies with this? Because it runs in families, right?
Well, I mean, I've actually done all my own genetics, and I've ran them through a lot of labs, and the genes come up for ADHD with family members of mine that have ADHD, and they're the same. Like, I don't want to go into too much of the neuroscience and genetics, because I'm not. I'm going to say something that somebody watching will be like, that's not exactly accurate. So I'm not, going to try and pretend that I am an expert in that. But I've seen the genes, even in my family members that would have ADHD, and they're the same sort of receptors that are responsible for tinnitus, for example, the D2 receptor in the brain. So a lot of people with ADHD will have, tinnitus issues. And most of us will have skin issues like eczema or dermatitis or psoriasis. Most of us, I've actually never met somebody with ADHD without gut issues, without bowel issues, really. Never met somebody with ADHD without them. So we're sensitive of mind and body. It's a different operating system. It is in our genes. It is, Dr. Amen in California will scan people's brains, and you can see the dark matter at the front of the brain. Dopamine is here, serotonin is here. So it's it's fascinating. But it usually is. Sometimes it can skip a generation, and it would be from a grandparent. There's no definitives in science. Obviously, science is obviously always evolving. So I'm not going to sit here and say this is exactly that. We don't know definitively anything, right? And it's more intelligent, I think, to keep an open mind, to keep learning, right? But most of the research is showing that yes, it's absolutely genetic from at least one parent. The other thing is a lot of ADHDers gravitate towards each other. So a lot of the time you'll see both parents have it, or one parent is on the spectrum and one parent is ADHD. And that works often really well, actually, because the person who is on the spectrum often can be quite direct. And that helps the ADHD or not overthink, and not I love when, when I'm chatting to somebody who's on the spectrum as well, because they will just say what they think. Now, I don't need to go catastrophizing or overthinking what they actually mean or over emotionalizing things. I can just deal with that information. So clear instructions and clarity is so important for somebody with ADHD, so that we don't go into that kind of overdrive or overwhelm, or because catastrophizing can often be because the brain's searching for dopamine. Any good or bad shock to the brain gives us dopamine. So if our brain is constantly searching for dopamine, it will search for intrusive thoughts. Or that's why a lot of ADHDers would have some subtypes of OCD. So that can be relationship OCD. That can be, anyway, there's 8 subtypes of OCD. I'm not going to go into OCD now, but intrusive thoughts would often be, and negative self-talk would be a very common trait of untreated or undiagnosed ADHD. Talking a lot, talking fast. Hello. So there's so many different ways of being able to kind of see when somebody might have ADHD. But if it's undiagnosed generationally, that's where you see even more issues often, because on the contrary, also, if you've got a family who either have had a lot of structures put in, like say parents or grandparents that knew that they were type A or whatever they called it, and they created structures within the family unit that works for their brain, and they passed those down, you will not see certain presentations as strong as others if they've had that background. Now, again, on the other side of that, if you've had maybe, difficulties in addictions, because there's a lot of addictions, that can come with ADHD. Because again, chasing dopamine, it's about which one you're going to go for. Exercise, great. Drugs, not so great. Obviously, but they're both about, chasing dopamine for want of a simplification. But, so it really, environment is really important, and how your parents sort of presented or navigated their life, or what support systems they had, or what negative things maybe they passed it. So that can happen sort of, that can, have a huge influence. Environment is obviously, anything, really important.
I can see how it might be even traumatizing, honestly, growing up, especially if it skipped a generation, or you have somebody who's more on the spectrum, more direct. There may be some traumatizing trauma issues that come up for the rejection or the criticism side of it, growing up in a household like that. So recognizing it earlier and earlier, in a family would be very important. If somebody suspects that they have ADD, ADHD, or they suspect that a child or somebody, many people aren't sure about how to get help. I mean, where do people go? And I generally refer to psychiatry. I do some of it myself with folks, but where's kind of the best way to get diagnosed?
Well, you did ask me that a while ago. Sorry, I never answered that, but just want to go back one step to what you had said, because I meant to say that earlier with trauma, because, there would be a lot of people that say, well, actually, that's just trauma, which, again, a psychiatrist will rule that out before they make, a diagnosis of ADHD, that there's not deep trauma that are causing similar presentations, because obviously that can happen. However, with ADHD, just like you said, people with ADHD experience trauma much deeper and store it, and much more than somebody who would not have ADHD, because we are so sensitive, because dopamine is the neurotransmitter that's responsible for creating memory. So if we have dopamine, we create a memory, and that memory gets stored. So again, that's why that rejection sensitivity can come up, because we've heard so much rejection growing up, because we're not showing up typically. So then that always gets triggered and layered upon. And what's that called? That's called trauma, because you're reliving it all the time. So a lot of people would say, oh, it comes from trauma. Well, yes, that could be true more often than not. And I think a lot of psychiatrists would agree with me. More often than not, if somebody thinks they have ADHD, if they really look into it, it's quite rare that somebody doesn't end up actually having ADHD, because it is just a totally different sort of many symptom sort of blueprint, as I said. But trauma would get, most of us with ADHD would have sort of trauma stuff. That's why when I work with people, I do a lot of DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy, emotional regulation skills, interpersonal skills and stuff like that. Because when I'm working with you, it's sort of to kind of build them up from the ground up again, because most people with ADHD were chasing that dopamine, or always thinking forward. But most people with ADHD have a myriad of incredible successes in their past. But if they don't understand what contributed to those successes that's innate in them, and how they're supposed to apply that and have confidence that they can do all these other things. So I kind of go back to go forward, building them up, from, strength space and all that. But anyway, so that was just a bit about trauma. I think it's important. Where would somebody go? I'm not living in the US full time, so I'm not going to be able to answer that perfectly. But, I guess anywhere in the world, well, again, let me take one step back. Most people with ADHD that really look into it will have ADHD, and that sounds like such a generalization, but that is what I found. The reason I'm saying that is it's the one diagnosis, unless there's acute trauma in the past, which still could mean that they could still obviously have ADHD, but it could just be, presentations from very deep, of course. But most people with ADHD, when they do some deep research into it, that think that they have ADHD, usually have ADHD. Now, to get a diagnosis, you can go to a psychologist or a psychiatrist. So obviously your provider, your GP would be obviously the first place to kind of get the diagnosis or get the referral. Well, to speak to first, or if you can go directly to a psychiatrist or psychologist. Correct. The reasons that somebody would go to to get a diagnosis are for validation of it or medication. So that's sort of, I have clients that basically have never gotten a diagnosis, and that doesn't matter in order to get ADHD coaching, which is, so psychiatrists will give medication, and they should give you the information that an ADHD coach, which I really hate the name of. Anybody can call themselves a coach, but check that they're trained. ADCA is where I trained. There's not that many of us in the world, but that is the one I would recommend to check if they've trained there or somewhere that's similar. So getting an ADHD coach is really helpful, because medication is amazing for a lot of people. I was always anti-medication. Now I am absolutely not anti-medication. It's not for everybody, but that's another conversation. But I guess the important things to note again, I'm not 100% sure of this in America, but I presume it's the same everywhere. A psychologist can make a diagnosis but cannot prescribe. A psychiatrist can make a diagnosis and prescribe. Okay, so, you know, the talk therapy, it's psychologist and the diagnosis. They cannot prescribe the medication. If that's the avenue that you're looking for, they do that. Okay, good. Same. Thanks. And then the psychiatrist won't really be doing the talk therapy with you. They will just ask you lots of questions to make the diagnosis, and they will give you the next step. It may be CBT, which can help with some parts. It's not the whole part. An ADHD coach will, you know, kind of do the kind of 360, help you even manage the medication, understand the neuroscience, share lots of stuff with you, but also coach you through your life and your goals. That would be sort of the pathway generally. It's also, if you want to go down the medication route, it is a controlled drug. So again, a psychiatrist is the only one that can prescribe that. In the UK, there are some nurse practitioners that are qualified to prescribe, but I don't know about, that's the only kind of territory that I've heard that can do that. I don't know, is it the same in the US?
It's getting closer now. It is control for the controlled substances. There are some medicines that aren't Strattera, things like that they can do, but for the controlled substances, absolutely.
Okay.
And I love that you delineate. We're going to stop for a short break here in just a second, and I want to talk more about diagnosis and ADHD coaching, because this is very important. I love what you do. But the point that I love that you made and was hoping to make too, is that the difference between psychiatry and psychology, and that is just, you know, people imagine going to the psychiatrist, laying on the couch, talking to their doctor, and that is not what happens. You know, you go, you get a formal diagnosis and a formal treatment. Hard work, right? All the hard work will happen outside in either coaching or in the psychology world. And so that's a great point to make. Thank you for doing that. I am going to stop this very briefly. We'll come back and talk a little bit more about the treatment aspects, because that's a big one. And take a short break. Tell people where they can find you, where they can find more information on you and your music. I know people are curious now. Go listen.
So I'm on Instagram. Nella, I am Nella is my Instagram handle for my music, and then ADH Diversity, so it still says ADHD, so ADH Diversity is my Instagram handle, or my new website is ADHDlifemastery.org, and then my music website is Nella@IamNella.com, just to confuse you all, but yeah, anyway, we can links.
They will hear it. They'll hear it here, but they can always go to my website at drpbetterlife.com, and all your links will be there. I will have them for everybody. So very good. We'll take a short break and be right back.
Depression, anxiety, low energy, weakness, these are just some symptoms of low B12 levels. And the absorbable B12 folate supplement that's helping people declare victory over depression symptoms is De Novo Plus B12 by Magna Pharmaceuticals. Patients with symptoms of depression often exhibit low levels of folate and vitamin B12. The human body needs sufficient folate intake to produce the essential neurotransmitters serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine. These neurotransmitters alleviate feelings of sadness, anxiety, and gloom. What makes De Novo Plus B12 so successful? De Novo Plus B12 contains readily absorbable folate and B12. That means it's more successful at correcting the root cause of your deficiency, not just the symptoms. Whether you are suffering with low energy, depression, fatigue, or anxiety, you owe it to yourself to learn more at magnaweb.com. That's magnaweb.com. Please let us know at checkout that you heard about De Novo Plus B12 on The Better Life with Dr. Pinkston.
Very good. So yes, the folate and B12, a big one. It helps with depression. I thank Dr. Lesser for supporting us. So in talking about ADHD and continuing, you mentioned something very important, and that is you had a difficult time accepting any possibilities of medication. I find that across the board, maybe not definite, but you can explain. But most people, that when we get the diagnosis and talk about treatment, almost everyone comes in with that first thought of, I don't want to be on medication. I'm afraid of medication. I'm afraid of getting addicted. You know, all those thought processes. So describe that and why we need to think maybe differently about that.
Yeah, no, I love this question, actually. So absolutely. I just had a client yesterday, and he had a very similar answer. Don't want to try medication. I totally get it. Honestly, I think Okay, so my brain is wanting to answer you at the exact same time, 4 different ways or 4 different things at the same time. So I'll try it and get the first one first. So, or one of them anyway. So I think a lot of people with ADHD, and this was my experience as well, have been on antidepressants because, you know, like twice I had pretty much a breakdown looking back when I was about 19. And then also when I was about 26. So both of those times it was either getting in or out of a relationship. And looking back, and I was undiagnosed, I hadn't a clue. So what it was absolute overwhelm, overstimulation, couldn't manage my emotions, had no vehicle of where to put the emotion. You know, it was just my, you know, overwhelm bucket was so high. So went on antidepressants, which I was always against medication. Now, honestly, best thing I ever did it twice, 3 months each time. I'm not saying this is how you should do antidepressants at all. Sure. So, you know, they brought me through that period of time when I felt great. I threw out the medication and I was great. However, you know, I was sort of feeling like a bit of a shell of myself. I was feeling like my personality had dumbed down. I had felt, and bear with me, if anybody's listening to this, please wait till I finish this point, because I don't want you to just hear what I just said and run with that, because it's definitely part of a more, you know, there's a few things I'm going to preface this with. So, you know, it made me have low motivation, not creative, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. However, it got me out of that black hole. And would I do it again if that happened? If I didn't know about my ADHD and all that? Absolutely. You know, it was necessary. A lot of people with ADHD have experiences of depression or social anxiety or anxiety, you know, from undiagnosed ADHD. So, you know, again, most people with ADHD have a lot of goals. We know we have huge potential, but often we're not getting there, and that's incredibly frustrating. So that can, you know, add to a lot of, or relationships aren't working out and you can't understand why, and you just don't have a roadmap, you know, all of those things. So that was sort of my experience. So I think a lot of people presume that ADHD medication is like an antidepressant, and if they've either experienced it or heard about it, that it, you know, gets rid of their personality, makes them, you know, behave different, or gets rid of their, you know, unique personality. Because most ADHDers have a fun personality. They like parts of themselves. We often have that really negative self-talk and kind of questioning ourselves a lot, but also this grandiosity bit when we know we're kind of killing things. We're getting all that dopamine, like, yeah, you know, so we don't want to get rid of that parts that we really like about ourselves, because that lights us up, right? So we don't want to get rid of that. So I think a lot of people with ADHD presume that ADHD medication is similar to antidepressants. I think most people that, you know, say exactly what you said to me when I, you know, talk about, you know, the medication options, how, you know, I really, once I've kind of finished explaining how it actually works, they have a different understanding. So, you know, I've seen it save people's lives, to be honest. I think a lot of people think that, sorry, I already said this. So I think a lot of people think it's like an antidepressant, like you must take it for a certain amount of weeks. It builds up in your system, then it can change, feel weird, if it makes you tired, low motivation. ADHD medication in general, if you've got side effects from an ADHD medication, it is not the right dose or medication for you. ADHD medication should make you feel more yourself. So normal. I'm a scientist. I need to, well, nobody wants to feel normal. That's boring, isn't it? But it should make you be able to access
normal. Your normal, maybe I should say. What your normal should be.
Yeah, right. So it's like, you know, I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to write songs anymore and go into that depth of, you know, and actually I was able to write songs far better because I was able to access those parts of my brain that were just muddled and all. It's like information soup, you know. Yeah, and then with women, you know, when they're close to time in the month, that can make it even kind of worse if we don't know how to, you know, what to do for it.
Correct.
So, I think people have a lot of misconceptions about it. I think people think there's a lot of side effects. And again, as I said, if you have any side effects, it's not the right medication. And it always takes trial and error. Also, you do not need to take it every day. It does not build up in your system, as in does not take 6 weeks, for example, like an antidepressant often takes to build up until it works, until it has efficacy. Sorry, there's like hair on my nose. You know when you have a hair and you can't find it, you're like, it's right. Anyway, but yeah, so you know, an ADHD medication, you would take it in the morning and it would last for about 11 hours and then it's gone. Obviously, it's not totally gone out of your system, but the effects of it are gone. You do not need to take it every day. You can take it during the week. You can take it a lot of people do take it every day. You do not have to. So when I kind of explain this to people, they're like, oh, I didn't realize it was like that. I'm able to write far better songs. I built a business that I wouldn't have been able to if I didn't actually take my ADHD medication and understand how to work my, it's not about one thing. And it's like a GLP-1, like Ozempic or something. That's not going to make you skinny alone. It's not, you know what I mean? It's always about the whole picture. It's never about just the one thing, right? Nothing in life is really, I think. But if we know what we're dealing with and we know how to navigate it, and then we because again, look, let's be real, you don't have to take ADHD medication. However, are you going to, which some people do, which is brilliant, are you going to exercise every single day, have enough fish oils, have enough B12, have enough vitamin D, L-theanine, et cetera, plus are you going to make sure there's no sugar in your diet? Are you going to make sure there's no caffeine? Like, there's so many things. Of course you can manage your ADHD without medication, but is that realistic for a lot of people? Maybe not. Okay, so it's a tool that we can use. Now, it can be a life changer for a lot of people. Personally, it has been for me. Do I take it every day? Almost, but I don't need to. And if I can't find it, the other thing is, I was just about to say, if I can't find it, I don't bother if I'm looking for it for too long. People say you can get addicted to your ADHD medication. I've never seen it. Most of us forget to take it, right? So it is like if you're going to weigh up, like in medical ethics, as you know, in medical ethics, you weigh up the pros and cons of something. And the research shows that if somebody has unmanaged, untreated, whatever way you're treating ADHD, their life expectancy is 13 years younger because of addictions, because of making the wrong choices and stress and divorce and relationship breakdown and. Okay. So if a pill is going to change some things that make your life inherently better, and you're going to live longer and live a much more successful life, then would that not weigh up the pros and cons? So it's about the whole picture, right? So I think personally, I've seen it be an absolute life changer for many people, including myself, including family members. Do I say that everybody should definitely take it? No, but I do think for a lot of people, it is worth a try, as well as, I don't think on its own, I think, ADHD coaching and like that would be the kind of standard ADHD coaching and ADHD medication. CBT, I mean, I actually bring in CBT and DBT into my own coaching, but, that wouldn't be in your training. I've done that separately, but CBT can be helpful, or OT, but I think, honestly, an ADHD coach is a game changer, because when your life experience, no matter what you bring to the table every week to an ADHD coach that's fully trained and understands it, when everything that happens in your life is validated by, well, that's called this, and this is what really helps with this. So, okay, how do we, and they're like, I've just seen so many brains, including mine, when I received ADHD coaching, just your mind is blown all the time going, wow, I'm not broken. There's a pathway for how my brain works. And actually it's far better result than what I was trying to do. And because masking is really common with ADHD, so we're always trying to show up as how we expect others think we should, you know what I'm trying to say, so again, I'm due my time of the month, so my brain is a bit like mush now, candidly. So trying to grab the thoughts, but anyway. So,
well, you stated things very well, though. I mean, medication is a tool. So we have to see things, if you have a certain diagnosis and a certain issue in your health and your life, you have to bring in your tools, what works best for you. And if you have a great professional working with you that can help you navigate those tools, that's a great part of it. And in the last few minutes that we have, I really want people to understand why coaching would be, medication, yes, that's what most people focus on. Just take a pill, it gets better. But that's not really where the improvement surfaces and comes from. I think the coaching is absolutely important. So how do people find a coach, and how do they build in, coaching, and why would somebody choose that?
Yeah, well, a lot of people, that sort of come to me didn't even know that ADHD coaching exists. Right. A lot of people don't know, but I mean, it's a lot of psychiatrists should and will know that an ADHD coach that is trained, but it's relatively new. So I suppose when they study, if they've been a psychiatrist for a long time, that wouldn't have been one of the, treatment plans, right? So there's gaps. So we're getting there with time, of course, but, yeah, so I guess like, yeah, a psychiatrist should offer that as a plan, but you know, where do you find one? You can email me. No, but there's a great website that most of my clients will have found me on, and people can choose a coach that makes most sense for them. And it is called the ACO. ADHD Coaches Organization. So that's where I don't advertise. I just built a website, but you know, that's where most people will come to me. But I suppose the difference with me, which is nice, that's why I have no problem promoting the website for people to find the right coach for them. But for me, you know, I work with mostly people who are similar to me because I'm the best coach for them, because my life experience matches theirs. I've had a lot of success in my life. So I work with a lot of people who have been quite successful. Sure. But they want to understand how to manage their brains. They want to understand their life experience. They want to understand how to get to their goals. We'll always get there, but overwhelmed, stressed, last minute, you know, with a myriad often of kind of maybe broken down relationships or interfamily issues because of, you know, generational undiagnosed ADHD. And also they want to understand all the great parts of their brain that they're maybe not utilizing, you know. And so when people see my bio, I suppose that I also have raised a child, and I've, you know, I do DBT, but also I've had a lot of success in the music. If they're the right person for me, they'll see themselves in that, and then they know that I'm the kind of right person, if that makes sense. So, you know, that's where I'd encourage people to go if they're looking for an ADHD coach, would be to the ACO, and they can look through the ADHD coaches. They can book an intro call to have a chat with them, ask them whatever questions they want to do, and go with the person that you feel like you resonate with best, and has a similar sort of, whoever's bio resonates with them, and on the call, and you know, see a few people. But again, if you have ADHD, don't see too many people, because often we can get paralyzed by too much choice. So if you resonate with someone really well, I would advise just go with them and try it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny you say that, because I tell many of my patients, even when we talk about going to a therapist, you know, if they're not ADHD, but just depressed or, you know, have trauma in their life, and we're looking for a therapist, I tell them, you know, your therapist can be much like looking for a partner in life, a spouse in life. You know, you date a couple and you're looking for the right chemistry and the right fit. And once you find the right fit, you're there, but you may have to break up with one or two or three or however many, you know, to get to the right one. So I explain to people, you know, when you interview and you look for somebody, if they are not right for you, break up with that and find somebody new. We try in states, we try as physicians to direct people. Of course, we have insurances and all that craziness. So we try to work under those obstacles. But, you know, we tell them it's not just one, there's not just one person we're going to throw at you and that's it. Sometimes you have to shop a little bit, and excuse the phrase shop, but sometimes you do. You have to look for the right person.
100%.
I think that's what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, there's no point in somebody who's totally doesn't resonate with, I have a very growth mindset, and, you know, idea generation, business generation, creative, you know, so, you know, I help some people scale their companies. I help some people save their marriage. It doesn't matter what they come to me with, they come to me with whatever is there, but I'll be able to explain their life experience by, well, that's called this, and here's some more research or information on that. But also, okay, how can we, you know, and this great tool, there's this, you know, so it's helping them to live a far less overwhelmed, far more successful life, but maybe not in the ways that they, you know, would have quantified success. But, you know, it doesn't matter if your business is going great, if your family home is falling apart. When somebody with ADHD.
Absolutely.
You frozen? Oh, you're back.
Yep.
You're frozen. Sorry. But yeah, and with therapy, that's another thing that a lot of people will come to me going, I've been to loads of therapists, but I just verbally processed through the whole session, and then the therapist has told me it's about my childhood trauma, and they don't think it is. I had that experience, and I think therapy is great. I'm not saying therapy is not great. A lot of my clients will have a therapist and me, but a lot of people have said, well, this isn't therapy, but it's the therapy I needed. So ADHD coaching isn't therapy, but it is very therapeutic, and it often can be the therapy that people didn't realize that they needed. So, you know, because I suppose, just to kind of preface that too, you know, you don't want what's really hard to hear is when somebody has been to multiple therapists and they haven't helped them in the way that they had expected to. So they feel like they're not helpable and that they're broken because even the therapist can't help them. Do you know that way? So I'll often meet people at that point and they're like, well, even the therapist couldn't help me. I'm like, well, did they understand ADHD? I don't know. I didn't even know I had it myself, whatever. Okay, well, then you're both speaking a different language, you know? So that's really important.
Yeah. And as we kind of tie things up, I tell you that I think that is very, very common. I'll have people who, do not want to look for another therapist or try it again because they had a very bad experience previously. And I explained, as you say, you described that beautifully. Sometimes they're just not the right person. They don't have the right understanding of you, and that's not your fault. It's not even their fault necessarily. We just have to do the work to find the right
all
person,
about education. Yeah. So we all understand. Yeah. I think as long as the conversation keeps going about what ADHD is and what it's not, I did a few talks recently and I had all these ideas of what to talk about, and I realized people in the room didn't really understand what it was. And I just started there because that's where we need to really understand. ADHD is not a bad thing. It is a strength of hyperfocus and a deficit of interest. If we're not interested, we're not going to be able to focus on something. So how can we see what's blocking our interest and how can we integrate that?
What you just said was very powerful. I like that. So well said. Well, as we kind of break down, I think kind of reach the end, but did we leave anything out at all that's important to you? You feel somebody with, the potential or an absolute diagnosis should hear? Is there anything you want to leave with our
truthfully, 500 things, but to choose one or two that I think is helpful. I think there's, if somebody is listening and they have ADHD or they think they may have ADHD, there's absolutely nothing wrong with you. 150 years ago, the hunter-gatherers that were the most successful would have been the ones with ADHD. So just because you don't fit into a society that wasn't built for you, that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. Actually, that's a huge strength, really. There's nothing broken about you, and don't trust every stupid thought that your brain gives you.
Absolutely. Yeah. That is so well done. Thank you. And Nella, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on. Can you give us a rundown again of where to find you? And again, this will be on the website. I'll have it all, but where can we find you?
Yeah, so I suppose more about ADHD. I have like a free 1-hour webinar all about ADHD on my website that people can get, and some courses and an application to work with me and stuff like that. And that's on www.adhdlifemastery.org. And then Instagram, Diversity, or Nella, I am Nella. And in both bios, you get the other ones. So,
Yes.
So I'm not going to give more links because I'll confuse it. But yeah, that's ADHDlifemastery.org is probably the best place.
Beautiful. Well, I will list them all. Thank you. And it is such a pleasure. Hey, good luck to you and everything that you are doing. I appreciate you so much. And for all of you out there, ADHD doesn't have to be a bad thing. I think that sums it up very well. But again, Nella, thank you so much.
Thanks. I appreciate it.